This is Algebra 1 Spring Test 10 study guide. Starting off, number 1, simplifying the radical expressions. You have a square root of 32. It's not a perfect square, but you have to find out what perfect squares go into it. 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, and it keeps going. But you start getting the numbers that are bigger than 32. Which one of these numbers can you multiply by and get 32? The best one, the largest one you can multiply by is 16 times 2. And then you could separate what times itself is 16. 4 times the square root of 2 is your simplified version, both positive and negative. 4 square root of 2. For the number 2, it says the square root of 30 over 121. In order to do this one, you want to separate them, the square root of 30 over the square root of 121. 121 is a perfect square. It is 11 times 11, so the square root of 121 is 11. And there are no perfect squares, going back to these again, that you can multiply by and get 30. So the square root of 30 over 11 is your simplified answer for number 2. We're solving these using square roots. So again, when you typically work a problem to simplify it or solve it, you work, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS is how it's abbreviated. When you're undoing things like we're doing here, you want to do it in reverse order. You want to work SAD MEP. That's how we've been saying it. So you want to look for any subtraction and addition. You have plus 16, so subtract it. Do it here to balance it. Now you have negative x squared equals negative 16. So no more subtraction and addition. Look to the next step. Anything multiplying or dividing. It's not as easy to see, but there's a negative 1 multiplying by that x squared right there. In order to undo that, you divide by negative 1. If you do it to the left side, divide the right by negative 1. That'll cancel and leave you with x squared equals negative 16 divided by negative 1 is positive 16. No more multiplication and division. The last thing, exponents. Get rid of that x squared by taking the square root of it. If you take the left side square root, you do the same to the right. X equals, what times itself is 16? Both 4 and negative 4. X squared plus 20 equals 4. Get rid of plus 20 to start. Do the same here, plus 20. X squared equals negative 16. So take the square root of x squared in order to get x by itself, and the square root of negative 16. X equals, now there's no number that when you multiply it by itself is going to give you a negative exponent. So x is undefined in this case. There are no real values that are going to give you x's value, and it's only because of that negative in front of that 16 under the radical. Then we're going back to a couple of weeks ago. Anything being raised to the 0 power is 1. Anything being raised to a negative exponent has to ride the elevator. So if it's at the top in this case, since there's no fraction shown, it's at the top. Negative 1 is going to stay on top. 7 to the first power is going to go down, and it's going to be the negative first power. It's going to become the positive first power. So negative 1 over 7. Negative 2 to the negative fourth power. Again, it's raised to a negative exponent, so it's going to ride the elevator. It's over 1. It's going to ride the elevator down. 1 is going to stay on top. Negative 2 is going to come down, and it's going to be raised to the positive fourth since it went down. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2, 8, times 2 is 16. It's an even exponent, so even we're dealing with negatives. Even is going to make a positive value, so 1 over 16 for number 7. 16 times 4 to the negative fourth power. Before you multiply, you have to take care of exponents. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So 4 to the negative 4 power is going to ride the elevator and going to go down. It's going to become 16, or 16 over 1 times 1 over 4 now to the positive fourth power. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. Excuse me, 16 over 1 times 1 over 4 to the fourth power is going to be 16 over 1 times 1 over 256. So when you multiply straight across, in this case, you're going to get 1 times 16 is 16, 1 times 256 is 256. And then you want to see what number goes into both of those. Well, we know 4 does, so let's break it down. We might have to go one step further. 4 times 4 is going to be 16. 4 times 6 is going to give you 24 and carry 1. So it's going to be 64. 4. So 4 over 64. And again, the number 2 is going to go into both of these for sure. So 2 goes into 4 2 times, and it goes into 64 32 times. So we could have broken this down by 16 from the very beginning, but just in case you use smaller numbers, you can always do it. Go one more time. 2 goes into itself once and into 32 16 times. Notice we get back to that number 16, 1 over 16. Number 9, 2y to the fourth times 3y to the negative 1. You multiply 2 times 3, 6. You multiply the same basis, y times y. You add the exponents. 4 plus a negative 1 becomes 4 minus 1. So 6y to the third power. N to the fifth to the third, a power to a power. Now instead of adding them, you multiply the exponents. N to the 5 times 3, n to the 15th power. P to the second to the negative 7th. Again, a power to a power. Multiply them. P to the 2 times negative 7 is P to the negative 14th. You can't leave a negative exponent like that. So make it ride the elevator. It goes down 1 over P to the positive 14th. 3h squared to the fourth. Everything gets raised to the fourth power. 3 to the fourth power. And h to the second to the fourth power means 2 times 4, so h to the eighth. 3 to the fourth power, 3 times 3, 9 times 3, 27 times 3, 81. So you have 81 h to the eighth power. Six to the 10th over 6 to the ninth. Dividing this time, you subtract exponents. 6 to the 10 minus 9, 6 to the first power, which is simply 6. M to the 8th over m to the 10th. Again, dividing m to the 8 minus 10 gives you m to the negative 2 power. Can't leave a negative exponent. Has to ride the elevator. It's at the top since there's no fraction already. 1 over m becomes to the positive 2 power. Same thing with number 15, except you're dealing with m and n. M to the 11th divided by m to the negative 1. Minus a negative 1 is going to become m to the 11 plus 1. Again, minus a negative. N to the 9th divided by n to the 15th. N to the 9 minus 15. So m to the 11 plus 1 is m to the 12. N to the 9 minus 15 is going to be n to the negative 6. Again, you can't leave a negative exponent. So there's no fraction, so everything's over 1. What's being raised to a negative exponent? N is, it rides the elevator down. M to the 12 stays on top. N, when it goes down, becomes to the positive 6. This one says 2. It kind of looks a little funny on the page, but 2 over 9j squared. Everything gets squared. 2 gets squared, 9 gets squared, and j gets squared. So 2 squared is 4, 9 squared is 81, and j squared is j squared. And 2 doesn't go into 81 because it's an odd number, so neither does 4. That is a simplified fraction. Write this one in scientific notation. In order to be scientific notation, remember it has to be between the numbers 1 and 10. 1 is acceptable, 10 is not. So it has to be actually not counting 10 between 1 and 10. So the only place you can put it to make it between 1 and 10 is right there. 2.47. You do not need to include the zeros that are not significant digits. How many times do you have to move that decimal to get it to that spot? 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It's times 10, and it's going to be to the fourth power. Determine if it's going to be positive or negative, if it's a large number or a big number or a very small number. This is a big number. Think about people, 24,000 people. That's why it's a positive value for scientific notation. This one has a negative value, 5.85 times 10 to the negative third. That means it's going to make a very small number. So you're going to move that 5.85 decimal, you're going to move it to make it a very small number. To make a small number, 1, 2, 3 spots right there. Fill in your decimal spots there, 0, 0. So the number in standard notation, 0.0585. Simplifying this expression, write it in scientific notation. You simply multiply the coefficients. 0.2 times 7.8. 2 times 8 is 16. Carry 1. 2 times 7, 14. Plus 1, 156. They have to move the decimal once, twice, so you get 1.56 times 10 to the negative 7th. Check this number to make sure it's between 1 and 10. It is. That is scientific notation. 1.56 times 10 to the negative 7. Solve these systems using substitution. Remember substitution, it's easier to write them side by side. Y equals 2x plus 2. Y equals 4x plus 4. Take this value. It tells us y all by itself. So take this value and plug it in right there for y. 2x plus 2 equals, the rest of it says 4x plus 4. Now you just have variables on both sides. Move the smaller 2x to the larger 4x side. Minus 2x, do it here. And it leaves you with positive 2x. Bring down plus 4 equals, these will cancel. 2. Move your positive 4 over by subtracting it. Do it here as well. 2 minus 4 is negative 2 equals 2x. Get x by itself by dividing by 2 on both sides. And x equals negative 1. There's your value for x. Once you have that one, bring it right here and plug it in for x. So y equals 2 times our new value for x is negative 1 plus 2. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 plus 2. So y's value is 0. X comma y, you always want to write them as an ordered pair unless instructed otherwise. X is negative 1, y is 0 is the solution. 21 says find the x and y intercept. In order to find the x-intercept, you plug in 0 for y. So what that does, that makes that go away. 9x equals 54. When you divide by 9 on both sides, you get the x-intercept. It is 6. Do the same thing to find the y-intercept, except this time plug in 0 here. It makes that go away, and it leaves you with negative y equals 54. That says negative 1y, so simply divide by negative 1 on both sides. And y equals negative 54. So your x-intercept is at 6. Your y-intercept is at negative 54. 22 says solve this equation. 1/3 x plus 5 equals 9. Again, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally works backwards when you're undoing. Undo plus 5 by subtracting it. So now we have 1/3 times x equals 4. 1/3 times something, you undo multiplying something by dividing by 1/3. Remember, when you divide by a fraction, anytime you divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. So 3 over 1, we'll cancel this part out. 3 over 1, which is the same thing as multiplying by 3. X equals 4 times 3, which is 12. 23, graph this equation. Y equals mx plus b. Your b value tells you where to begin. In this case, our b value is negative 2. Our m value tells you where to move. Our m value in this case is negative 1 over 3. So now we have everything we need to graph the equation. Begin at, on your y-intercept, begin on your y-axis at negative 1, 2. That's where our b value tells us where to begin. Our m value tells us either up and down, over, left, and right, rise over run. Negative 1 says go down 1. Positive 3 says go to the right 3 times. Down 1, over 1, 2, 3. Second point based on your movement, and draw as straight a line as you can through your 2 points to create your graph. 25 says use this, solve this system with elimination. Check and make sure your x is on top of your x's, y is on top of y's, constants on top, equals in the same spot. Everything looks good. Also check to make sure your coefficients, at least one set of them, are opposite values. Our coefficients for x are both 1, and our coefficients for y are 2 and negative 2. So we have opposite values. That means we're in good shape. All we have to do is combine these to eliminate. When you combine 1x plus 1x, it leaves you with 2x. When you combine 2y minus 2y, it leaves you with no y's. We eliminated that. That was our goal. And when you combine negative 10 and positive 2, you have negative 8. In order to get x by itself, divide by 2. X equals negative 4. Now we have a value for x. Substitute it back in just like a few problems ago in order to get y's value. It doesn't matter which equation you use. X minus 2y equals 2. I just grabbed the one on the bottom. Plug it in or substitute it in right there. Negative 4 is our new value. Minus 2y equals 2. Undo negative or minus 4 by adding it to both sides. That'll cancel and leave you with negative 2y equals 6. Divide by negative 2 to cancel out multiplying by negative 2. And your y value is negative 3. Again, x comma y as an ordered pair is negative 4 comma negative 3 is your solution. 25 says graph this inequality. Again, y equals mx plus b. You're going to graph it the same way. Your b value in this case is negative 1. Your m value is positive 3. Slopes are always fractions, so make it over 1. Graph this equation, graph this inequality, just like we did a few problems ago. Begin at negative 1. So that's what our b value tells us to start on our y-axis at negative 1. Our m value says 3 over 1. That's positive 3. That means go up. Over 1, that means go right. So go up 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1 time. That's where we're going to put our second point. Here's the first difference between equations and inequalities. You want to check your symbol. It says less than. It does not say or equal to. So instead of having a solid line, we're going to draw a dashed line or a broken line through. We draw a dashed line or a broken line through both of our points in a straight line. The second part that's different between an equation and inequality is one side has to be shaded. It doesn't pass through the origin 0, 0, which is a good sign. It's close, but we want to check which side we got to shade. So plug in place of y, 0 is less than 3 times plug in 0 in place of x minus 1. 0 is less than anything times 0 is 0 minus 1. 0 is less than negative 1. You have to check this statement's truth value. Is 0 less than negative 1? No, it isn't, which means that the side where 0, 0 is, in this case over here, is not the correct side to shade. You shade opposite where 0, 0 is. That's a completed graph for an inequality. Number 26 gives you the graph and it tells you to write the inequality itself. This is a simple one because it's a nice horizontal line. So it's talking about the y value for each of these. Your y value, and it gives us negative 1 as our y value. It's a solid line, so it's going to be or equal to no matter what, since it's a solid line. But it's saying all the numbers that are smaller than, all the numbers that are less than. So y is less than or equal to negative 1. If you need to plug in 0, 0, just like we did on 26 to check the truth value, you'll get 0 is less than negative 1, which again tells you that this side over here is false, which means you shade the opposite direction. 27 says you have $31 to spend at the music store. Each cassette tape costs $6 and each CD costs $12. Write and graph a linear inequality that represents this situation. Let X represent the number of tapes and Y the number of CDs. So in order to write a linear inequality, 6, it says let X represent the tapes. So tapes are X, and Y the CDs. CDs are Y. So 6 times however many tapes you buy plus 12 times however many CDs you buy has got to be, it tells us at the beginning, it says you only have $31 to spend. So it's got to be, those two together have got to be less than or equal to $31 since you have $31 to spend, but you can't go to $31.01. That would be too much. So it says write and graph the linear inequality. Well, here's our nice linear inequality itself. The second part says to graph it. It's in standard form, so we'll go ahead and graph it using intercepts. Will probably be the easiest way to graph this one. So if we want to find the x-intercept, we plug in 0 for y, and it gives us 6x equals 31. When we divide by 6 on both sides, we get x equals 5, and then 31 divided by 6 is not a nice even number. Instead of that, it's actually 5.16, and it repeats. So 5.167 approximately. So on your x-axis, which is this one, we want to go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need to at least show 6 since we're going to go to 5.1. So right here is going to be our x-intercept, roughly right past 5. In order to find your y-intercept, you do likewise, but you plug in 0 in place of x. So it simply leaves you with 12y equals 31. Again, when you divide by 12 on both sides, you're not going to get a nice even number since it's not an integer that goes in it. But 31 divided by 12 is in fact the number 2.58. So your y-intercept is 2.58. So this is your y-axis right here. So here's 1, 2, 3. 2.58 will be right past 2.5. So roughly right there is your second point. Now we have our 2 points to draw a straight line. The next part that's different is this right here. Is it going to be a solid line or a dashed line? Well, you know, since it's or equal to, that means it will be a solid line. The second part that's different about inequalities is we have to shade one side or the other. Well, we know it's less than, so it's going to be below this line. But the easiest way to do it is to go ahead and just check the true value of 0, 0. When I plug in 0 here, I get 6. When I plug in 0 there, I get 6 times 0, which is 0, plus when I plug it in here, 12 times 0 is 0. Is that less than or equal to 31? Yes, that is a true statement. Therefore, everything shaded this direction is the truth. And then number 28 says solve this systems by graphing. Just graph both of these inequalities. The first one says y equals mx plus b for you. So it's nice and neat. Your b value is 4. Your m value is 1, which is over 1. The second one, we have to move it around. Move 2x over by subtracting it. It becomes y is less than or equal to negative 2x minus 4. Again, we have y equals mx plus b. So now it says y equals mx plus b. Your b value for this one is negative 4, and your m value is negative 2. Remember, it slopes there over 1. So just graph both of these inequalities. The first one, y equals mx plus b, it's going to go through where your y value is at 4, because your b value is 4. Your m value says go up 1 and to the right 1. So we got to go up 1 more and over to the right 1. So now we have 2 points. We can draw ourselves an inequality. We can draw a straight line. And it is a solid line since it says or equal to. So we're going to draw ourselves a straight line through there. The other part about inequalities, you have to shade one side or the other. Plug in 0, 0. 0 here is less than or equal to 0 plus 4. Is 0 less than or equal to 4? Yep. So we're going to shade everything that direction. For the other one, you're going to begin at negative 4 this time. Negative 1, 2, 3, 4. Your slope says negative 2, so go down 2 and to the right 1. So down 2 more, and we're going to go over to the right 1. Again, is it going to be solid or dashed? This tells us it's going to be a solid line. So go through both of those 2 points there. And then again, we're going to shade one side or the other. We can use 0, 0 again. 2 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is less than or equal to negative 4. Is 0 less than or equal to negative 4? No, it's not. Therefore, this side's wrong for this one, which means everything that direction.